Hello and welcome to another episode of Real Talk with Roberta's House. Real Talk is a series of live and recorded conversations about various aspects of grief. Roberta's House is a family grief support center with offices located in both Baltimore City and Prince George's County. We provide various programs and services to help people go through their grieving process after a loss. My name is Janaya Stanley, and I am this clinical supervisor at Roberta's House. And tonight's topic is about disenfranchised grief. Before we get into today's topic, I want to just tell you a little bit about the things that Roberta's House has going on. So as you may or may not know, Roberta's House is building a brand new facility that will be located on North Avenue, the 900 block of North Avenue. And we are almost finished completion of the building. And we want to invite you to be a part of our history by purchasing a brick paver. And it will line the walkway of the entrance of the building where you'll be able to memorialize a loved one or shout out your church or organization, and you all will be a part of our history. So if you go to our website at robertashouse.org, you'll be able to get more information about purchasing a brick. You can also be a part of our Tree of Life, which will be displayed inside the building. And you could purchase a leaf, a butterfly, or a stone. And again, you can also memorialize a loved one or, put your family's name as a legacy or things like that that'll be located inside the building. So if you'd like more information about that, again, go to our website at robertashouse.org. Today's topic is about disenfranchised grief. And disenfranchised grief is a term coined by Dr. Kenneth Doka. And the term means that it's talking about grief that's not recognized by society. And we have programs related to pregnancy and infant loss. And pregnancy and infant loss is also disenfranchised grief. It's a loss that society does not recognize. So without further ado, we're going to get into today's topic. I am joined by Mrs. Marcia Sneed, who is a family support specialist for the Hope Project. She is also one of our beloved volunteers at Roberta's House. She volunteers for the Families Healing Together program, peer support group, and she also volunteers for Camp Erin. We need her to do, she's willing to do. So we thank you, Marcia, for being available today.
Okay, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
October is Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month. And Marcia, can you talk a little bit about that, like what the significance is for Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month?
It's very important. It's actually our chance to put the word out, to bring awareness, because a lot of people really don't think about it that way. Since it's been so taboo in the past to think about infant and pregnancy loss, generally, it's thought about only within the nucleus, the immediate family. Mm-hmm. It's generally not thought of socially or outwardly where this would be. This is actually a charge that we should have to have more awareness on it because it has affected us in many ways. Mm-hmm. So I think that it's significantly important, especially if we were to educate the community on it, what needs to be done to support one another and to help with the mental health part of it as well.
What makes it disenfranchised? What makes a loss through pregnancy or infancy disenfranchised?
It is because, again, like I said, once upon a time, if you lost a pregnancy, it was taboo. You were sent away or went away, or it was washed away, or it wasn't talked about. Mm-hmm. It was something that you never heard about at the kitchen table. Families shunned upon it. It was always something wrong with the person. And it was never discussed as a family and gone through as a family. And so it was not looked at as any kind of emergency. It was, if you didn't bring a baby home, then let it go, get over it. If you came home with an empty blanket, let it go, get over it. The more you think about it, the longer it's going to stay around. No one ever thought about the long-term significant damage that it does to a woman and even the father of the child.
Mm-hmm. So we have on our Hope Project shirts. Can you tell us a little bit about the Hope Project?
Well, the Hope Project itself is an acronym. It stands for Healing Ourselves Through Peer Empowerment. And in that, most of the women that are in the program have experienced such a loss, as well as our clients. So it's a twofold where we experience and support one another. We have a home visitation program where we help the women who have suffered such a traumatic loss to first acknowledge it, one,
Right.
to help her work with the grief and give her tools to help her to get to her new norm and set new goals for her life. That includes now memorializing her child versus going over and over and over the traumatic experience itself. Then we also have support groups that helps anchor that in using the tools to help them. A lot of women think when they have a loss, like, I'm the only person that's ever had such a loss, nobody else has. But when they come to a support group and hear other stories and see that other women have experienced such a loss and there was really no one there to support them as well, then that really aids in the healing process itself.
Absolutely. That's one thing that I can say that is very unique. Well, not very unique, but somewhat unique about the Hope Project is that you all as staff have experienced the same type of loss. So tell us a little bit about that, how impactful that is for you to be able to work in the field where you've had your loss.
Absolutely. Well, that's actually why I came initially. I suffered the loss of both my son and my daughter, a set of twins. And I came to Roberta's house first to help. But I was told by the president at the time, and that, honey, you need more help than you can give right now. And that was an honest answer, because I really came just to, help other women, because that's a lonely time. That's a time when you feel totally by yourself. And I just never wanted anybody else to feel like they had to go through this alone. So in going through the program, it was beneficial for me. I went through it twice, matter of fact. So once I came through it, I was like, this is something that I would have to stick with. Okay, knowing this type of pain, it isn't a good thing, not at all. Right. But it certainly helps you understand where a person can be, the depth. You can never tell a person, I know what you feel, because you don't. You don't understand the relationship that woman had with their child, whether it was born or unborn. Right. But you do know the depth of that type of pain because you've experienced it yourself. So it helps you with your compassion. It helps you know what kind of things to look for, because you know what you needed that you didn't get. Right. It helps you to ask the right questions. It helps to know when to be quiet and give a space of silence, but be there for support. Right. It helps you to know the importance of a support system. It helps you recognize when a person is in crisis. It helps you understand where extenuating circumstances where their basic needs may not be met, it's contributing to the grief not being addressed. It helps you to understand the parenting of any other children that the couple may have, and where anyone else in the household may be traumatized, or where the angel mom herself is just pushing on, but she's not doing anything to heal. It's not being addressed because she has responsibilities. Right. I think we have a big up by having gone through that, because we know the steps. We know that the body still thinks it's pregnant. We know that once a mother has her child, there's no other experience like that. Right. And to have to face the world without that child, you just need support. That's not anything that anyone should have to go through alone. And I think that benefits all of us to know, especially when we first have the opening conversation and you say, I too am an angel mom. You don't know the brick that it takes off of the pressure off of that person, because now they're in a room with someone who can truly understand, someone who doesn't make them explain their tears, somebody who doesn't say, when are you going to get over it? Someone who's not going to put a timeline on the length of time somebody is allowed to grieve. So I think in that aspect, it really is beneficial to have had that experience, although it doesn't sound right to say beneficial, but it significantly supports your ability to help her.
Absolutely, absolutely. Being able to identify with the person after having gone through it yourself, regardless of whatever the circumstances may have been, absolutely, like you said, definitely helps with your being able to empathize and sympathize and be compassionate towards the person you're working with. Absolutely. There was something you mentioned when you were talking about the other children in the home. With disenfranchised grief, unfortunately, a lot of times grief in children is disenfranchised. We don't see it. We don't see that a child is hurting because they miss their loved one. So when a mom loses a baby, whether it's a miscarriage or, the family's so excited that the mom is pregnant and now the pregnancy has ended. Talk a little bit about the impact that it has on the other children in the home.
You hit right on it when you said that it's disenfranchised and the children are not included. A lot of times adults feel as though they should remove a child from a situation, send them outside, send them to school, send them someplace else. But what they're doing is robbing them of their opportunity for closure.
Mm-hmm.
When a child hears that their parent is pregnant, they begin to have expectations just like the parent does, especially if this is their opportunity to be big brother or big sister.
Right.
And then that is taken away with no explanation. You hear that mommy's having a baby, you see all the planning, you see all the excitement. Depending on how young you are, you may have gone on some of the appointments to the OBGYN and listened to the heartbeat, and you've done a lot of things. You've probably gone to school and talked about it with your friends and told your teacher, in church or wherever. And this child is expecting to have someone come in the home. And a lot of times they already have a name associated with it. So you hear them talk to the belly by the name.
Yeah.
And when you're coming out, and as mom gets larger, the child begins to get more of an expectancy that they will have a sister or brother. And then it doesn't happen. And then the child goes away and there's no explanation. And then there's hush hush conversations in the room, or mom is crying every day, or she can't get out of bed and do the things with him or her that she once did, or her patience is short, or the child can't attend his or her activities because mom simply doesn't have the energy to do it, or dad is going through, or the roles have to change in the house. And the regular routine has been totally upset by this event, but no one is talking to the child. So generally you find out that there's some type of disenfranchised grief because the child will go to school and talk about it with classmates, or they begin to cry, or their behaviors begin to change. And then you'll get a call from the school. And a lot of times that's when you'll find out, well, hey, wait a minute, this child has been affected. They draw pictures that will signify that there's some type of red flag going on or something like that. They stop talking. Sometimes their eating habits change, but children are highly affected by anything that affects their parent. Better still, the loss of an expectant sibling with no explanation, no closure. So a lot of times that's what aids and has a lot to do with the child having disenfranchised grief.
Absolutely. Thank you, Marcia. This has been a wonderful conversation. Everyone, I just want you to just keep on the lookout. We'll be having future conversations this month about disenfranchised grief. We're going to be talking to various agencies. We're going to be talking to other staff in the Hope Project to talk about their personal stories and the significance of the work that they're doing. So one last thing, Marcia, what's one thing that you want people to remember from this conversation?
That disenfranchised grief has many faces. You should never rule out any type of death. I don't care if it's the death of a parent, a death of a pet. It can be the loss of a home. It can be vicarious trauma of watching a loved one or a friend go through something that's traumatic. It can be a child. It can be the loss of a family heirloom that was passed down to you. There's numerous amount of things that can cause grief that actually looks secondary to the world, but it is highly significant to the person if they have a connection to it. And a lot of times people have connections to items and things that you wouldn't normally think that they would, but that is the glue that kind of keeps them together. And when something happens with it, it causes trauma. Now that trauma left unnoticed, number one, starts a wheel with mental health issues, behavioral issues, loss of interest in social events, a lot of changing, but left untreated, it can get where we are today, and many times where there are a lot of mental health issues at this point that have now been medicated versus being treated. So you should never overlook someone who has had a traumatic incident regardless. Talk to them, listen, find out where they are, notice their changes, notice the changes in behaviors, habits, routines, that type of thing, because the sooner you pay attention to it, the sooner it's addressed and the sooner the healing will begin.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Marcia. This has been a wonderful conversation. And again, everyone, be on the lookout for our future Real Talks on Mondays and Wednesdays, and we'll be in touch. Thank you so much. Take care.
Right.